Tesla just had their Q2 earnings call with Elon and everything, so we're going to get into all the details about products that they talked about on the call specifically, and then go over the PDF that they put out that gives all the detailed numbers and stuff. But first, some highlights. Tesla was actually profitable in Q2, this quarter where most companies were not profitable and most people had to shut down. Tesla's factory was shut down. They managed to be profitable again, which is really impressive. They increased their cash equivalents by $535 million up to $8.6 billion, and this is their fourth sequential quarter with profitability. They had $327 million GAAP operating income and a $104 million GAAP net income. Again, this is really big for Tesla. They increased the range of the Model S to 402 miles, and they kept ramping up Model 3 in China and Model Y at Fremont. So those are the highlights from the numbers and stuff, and we'll get more in depth on that in a second. But first, let's talk about the highlights from the call itself. Alright, so Tesla confirmed their factory location. It is officially going to be in Texas, Gigafactory, Texas. And Elon said it's going to be very close to Austin. Elon said it's going to be 5 minutes from the local airport there, and it's going to be 15 minutes from downtown Austin. He said it's going to be open to the public, it's going to be an ecological paradise and right along the Colorado River, and it's about 2,000 acres of land, which is their biggest factory to this point. Or at least their biggest plot of land, and it sounds like they have a really grand vision for what exactly this is going to look like, and it's going to be really inviting to the public. It's going to be really beautiful everywhere, and they're producing clean vehicles. They want to give off that image. So what they're going to produce there is mainly the Cybertruck and the Semi, but then he also said the Model 3 and the Model Y for the eastern half of the United States. So very interesting there. It sounds like that will be the exclusive Cybertruck factory, as well as they'll be making the Semi there. They're also making the Semi elsewhere. And then Model 3 and Model Y will be for the eastern half of the United States. What'll be really interesting to see is if build quality gets way better at the Texas factory, are people going to be exclusively trying to get the Texas builds of cars as opposed to the Fremont builds? It might be one of those things like if you're a guitar player, you want an American Fender. You might end up wanting an Austin Model Y as opposed to a Fremont one in a couple years. But he did say they're going to continue expanding in California, so it looks like he calmed down after those tweets where he was talking about how they were going to move completely out of California. And they said they're going to be building the Roadster at their Fremont factory, which makes a lot of sense. They've already started the initial work and initial construction on that factory in Texas, he said this past weekend, so that's pretty exciting to hear. They're starting to work on it, and probably sometime next year we'll start seeing photos of it and what it's actually looking like. We'll see how much longer it takes them to build this as opposed to the Shanghai factory. Elon talked about how they got solar costs down so that Tesla Solar is now the cheapest out of any solar provider in the US, and they're actually doing a lowest price guarantee, along with a money back guarantee to guarantee that customers really want to go for it. And I think both of those are really good because I actually know some people personally who got solar on their roof. They were a little afraid to go with Tesla, and they didn't end up going with Tesla, and having those guarantees probably would have convinced them. Elon talked about how the Model S now goes 402 miles of range, so you could go from LA to San Francisco on one charge and have some miles to spare. And then he talked about full self-driving, talked about how the capability is way better than people realize that it is, and that by the end of the year, he still thinks full self-driving will be ready because he, right now, can get from work to home and back with very little interventions. He didn't say no interventions, so they still have work to do, but he thinks they'll have it done by the end of this year. So they talked about how this was Tesla's first full year of profitability, which is really big for the company. And then coming up next year, they're going to have 3 new factories, along with all the new products they're launching. It's really looking good and really looking big for Tesla coming up. Someone asked about compact vehicles, and Elon said he can't talk about future products that they haven't released because they need to talk about those at release events. But he did mention that it would make sense for them to make a more compact vehicle in the future, along with a vehicle that holds more passengers. He said they'll do the obvious things that you'd expect. It'll just be a while. Well, he didn't say a while, but it will be a while. Especially because he said they still have a long way to go with the 3 and the Y, and then the Cybertruck, which hasn't even come out yet, as well as the Semi, which hasn't come out yet. When someone asked about the most important full self-driving milestones, Elon had some pretty interesting things to say. He said the major milestone he sees is them transitioning from what he calls 2.5D to 4D. So right now the cameras kind of are taking 2D images and basing everything off of that, versus in the future, it's going to be all reinterpreted by the system that we know they've been rewriting for a while. and it's going to be in 4D, and he said the fourth dimension being time. He said it's a giant improvement and they've been working on it for a long time, and he's using it and certain employees are using it and such, but it hasn't actually been rolled out to the public yet. And then in classic Elon, he was like, it'll be able to do stop signs, turning, everything, pretty much. So it's like really encouraging, but then he says pretty much, and you're like, wait, you just said everything though. I really have no doubt they'll get there one day. I just think it's going to take a lot longer than they think, but I would love to see it faster. And then he talked about the challenge of liability, because they know they're going to get it to the point where it's better than a human being, but how much better can it be and how much better does it need to be? Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If you noticed, it's a different channel called And More, where I'm going to be getting more in-depth like this for videos like this and keeping some of the other stuff for the main channel. Some interesting details about the Model Y were, one, that they canceled the standard range. Someone asked that in a question. We knew that that happened. And Elon talked about how 300 miles is really going to become the standard for all electric cars. People don't really want less. And then he talked about how the Model Y will actually be quite different in Berlin. A lot of the internals will be totally redesigned to be more efficient to actually build over there, because they're building it from the ground up along with the factory. Now, he said on the outside, you won't be able to tell a difference. It'll drive all the same, but there will be a lot of differences. And he talked a while about manufacturing, which was really interesting. They talked about how interested in it they are, how they're always working on improving it, and how they really are passionate about it and want other people to be passionate about it. And a couple times in this call, they actually gave job offers out there. They talked about different positions they need and how they really want passionate people working on manufacturing, batteries, all this other stuff, and they're basically putting it out there like, if you work in that area, come work at Tesla. They talked about rolling out Tesla insurance for other states besides California, because right now it's only in California, and they talked about how they could have rolled it out exactly the same as it is in California, more just your standard insurance model, but they're working on this model that actually uses a lot of data from the driver, and they specifically talked about how it's going to be a model where if you're driving a lot more aggressively and driving dangerously, your rates are going to be higher, versus if you're driving safe all the time and using their safety systems and autopilot a lot, it's going to be cheaper. It's one of those futuristic things that sounds a little weird to me, like it's drawing that line of like, I don't know if I want you to know how exactly I'm driving at every moment, but at the same time, if it makes my insurance cheaper, then that's great. And that's how insurance operates anyway. They base it off of your age and crashes and incidents you've had and such, along with a lot of other factors, but this seems a little extreme to me, but I'll have to see what it's like in practice. And they said they're going to be rolling that out in a few states this year, pending regulatory approval, and then nationwide in the future. One of the most interesting parts about the call is that Elon said the thing that bothers him most right now at Tesla is that their cars are not affordable. Now, this is great to hear, because there's so many Tesla people out there that are like, Teslas are affordable. You don't have to pay for gas. You don't have to pay for, I don't know why I had that accent, but obviously, Teslas are still expensive. Even with all the savings that you get along with it, which are great, for the average person buying a $20,000 car, going up to a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 car is not very reasonable. So Elon said that's their focus, is getting that cost down and remaining a little bit profitable and getting the cost down of cars, because they're still focused totally on their mission. He said he's not totally focused on being as extremely profitable as they can be. Slightly profitable, maximum growth. And then when someone talked about 500,000 units this year and how that's their goal, but they're not entirely sure if they're going to hit it, they asked if it was a demand issue, and Elon said there is no demand issue whatsoever. Multiple times he reiterated that's not a demand issue. If anything, it's a supply issue in figuring out the efficiencies of cars like the Model Y with that rear casting assembly and such. And that's something I think most people kind of knew. It seems like Tesla is producing the cars and then selling them. It doesn't really seem like they have a big lot of Teslas sitting out there. It's a lot of times kind of hard to even get a Model 3 right now. No new info on the Cybertruck, not really much about the Semi other than they're working on it, and we're going to hear more on Battery Day about the Semi and all of their cars. So the next updates like this will be Battery Day. So the next big updates like this with all these questions will probably be Battery Day. So back to the numbers. In Q2, Tesla produced 6,326 Model S's and X's and delivered 10,614 of them. For the Model 3 and the Model Y, Tesla produced 75,946 and delivered 80,277, and they deployed 27 megawatts of solar and 419 megawatt hours of storage. Now, regarding production capacity, Tesla is installing more equipment in Fremont and citing a current capacity of 400,000 cars per year with a goal of 500,000 to be hit by the end of 2020. They went into more detail about this, talking about how it's going to be difficult to hit that goal of 500,000 now because of this quarter and all these shutdowns and everything, and they're not sure how consumers are going to be buying cars the rest of the year, but they're still striving for that, and that is their goal. I will say that that's kind of a double-edged sword there, because we want them to hit that goal, but at the same time we see what happens when they're really aggressively trying to hit these goals. Quality control suffers, and I saw it in my Model Y. We've seen it on tons of Model Ys. It does get better over time, but it's a sacrifice that they're sacrificing in order to hit these high delivery numbers. Now in Shanghai, the Model 3 is going as planned, and Model Y lines at the factory will be going forward as planned with deliveries of the Model Y in China in 2021. And they also shared all these photos of what the Model Y line actually is looking like at Gigafactory Shanghai. Not much to update for Gigafactory Berlin other than they're on track and it's still being built, and that they're learning everything from their other factories and implementing that into Gigafactory Berlin to make it more efficient. Regarding full self-driving, Tesla talked about the current status of the stoplight and traffic light control, and also talked about how the eventual goal is ultimately that it doesn't need any driver confirmation, which is pretty obvious. Regarding software, Tesla had a pretty cool sentence in the PDF that I really liked hearing, and it said, quote, "Every week we review feedback from blogs, social media, and aggregators to learn what functionality our customers would like to see next." Now that's a really encouraging sentence to hear from Tesla themselves. It's something we kind of knew that they did, but they didn't really say it officially. At least I haven't heard it officially from them. So it's really great to see it in here and know that it's not for nothing when you post something and say something about a new feature that you want or something that could improve on the software. And lastly, regarding the Model Y, Tesla said they're still on track for 2021 deliveries in both Shanghai and Berlin, which is pretty crazy because the Berlin factory hasn't even been built yet, and they're saying next year, probably by the end of the year, there will be deliveries of the Model Y there. So what did you think about this earnings call? Did you expect Tesla to be profitable, or were you surprised by some of the products they talked about and everything? What were you most excited about? And leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If you noticed, it's a different channel called And More, where I'm going to be getting more in-depth like this for videos like this. So make sure you're subscribed here. You can also check out my other channel, Ryan Shaw. Make sure to like this video if you appreciated it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.